Reports of strange flying objects in the sky are older than the United States.
And just as we started down the woods, well, it went up through the trees. Looked like a big cigar shape with light lit from both ends.
Some of them reported in scientific journals that date back to the 16th century, but they've usually been classed with Loch Ness monsters and relegated to the Sunday supplements, until World War II showed us that some of the most fantastic dreams can be very real.
Governments have secrets. It's part and parcel of governments is to keep secrets.
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say to that, Colonel Peck?
Those charges are absolutely untrue.
If there was an admittance by the establishments that UFOs and aliens were real, it would cast doubt upon their authenticity, because they have concealed this subject for decades.
And then it seemed to just go together, make a ball, and fly out into that field, and it was a great big, huge yellow glow out there.
Oh my God. There she is. There she is, right there. Oh my God.
Since the close of the war, hundreds of reports of strange objects in the sky have been filed with the Air Force, and most of them have been easily explained.
Most cases we get are misidentifications, the occasional hoax.
Experimental jet aircraft, weather balloons, reflected ground lights, unusual cloud formations, and so on. But here is a picture that was released just today by the United States Coast Guard.
There is a small percentage that at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try, and I can be as skeptical as anyone, and I am, there still remains cases that are unidentified.
Finally captured something on videotape that people have been seeing for hundreds of years.
Maybe someone within the high establishments wanted this to get out.
Officially, you know, it's probably started in the 1950s. They did a thing called Project Sign.
Well, the aims of Project Sign initially was to find out what validity were they in regards to people claiming to see UFOs. So they had to find out exactly what was traversing the American skies, because was it a threat? The mainstay of that particular report was indeed the alleged crash at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947.
Edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Suddenly it was like UFOs are real, and then the next day's newspaper, no, it wasn't, it was a balloon. So quickly that story was suppressed, as it usually is.
A few moments ago, I talked to officials at Wright Field, and they declared that they expect the so-called flying saucer to be delivered there, but that it hasn't arrived as yet. In the meantime, General Ramey describes the object as being of flimsy construction, almost like a box type. He says that it was so battered that he was unable to determine whether it had a disc form, and he does not indicate its size. Ramey says that so far as can be determined, no one saw the object in the air, and he describes it as being made of some sort of tinfoil.
Some major UFO cases are poo-pooed, watered down, etc. In their findings, they concluded there were no verifiable evidence to suggest there was any threat to the defence of the United States.
Cases that remain unidentified and that some people would say is an argument for there being an extraterrestrial explanation are very rare. Most cases we get are misidentifications, the occasional hoax, you know, aeroplanes, planets, you name it. And there is a small percentage that at the end of the day, no matter how hard you try, and I can be as skeptical as anyone, and I am, there still remains cases that are unidentified.
Project Grudge itself, there's a name, isn't it? I mean, they did not believe it. Back in the 40s, the American military machine was not even wanting to waste their time with these subjects. They'd rather do other stuff, you know, but they were commissioned to do this by the people.
Eventually we ended up with Project Blue Book, which finished in 1969, closed officially in 1970.
The United States Air Force, in discharging its responsibility for the aerospace defense of the nation, is called upon to investigate reports of unidentified flying objects. Two Air Force officers have over the years been very closely associated with this activity. Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Tacker was formerly the chief spokesman for the Air Force on the matter, and Major Hector Quintanilla is now the chief of Project Blue Book. Major Quintanilla, what are the objectives of Project Blue Book?
The objectives of the program are twofold. They're the same as they have been since 1953 when the regulations were written. First of all, to try to determine if the UFO phenomena presents a threat to the security of the United States. And second, to determine if the UFO phenomena exhibits any technological advances which could be turned into research and development.
It only had a small staff in an office. Its scientific director was the man who invented the phrase close encounters, Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
Whilst the Air Force gathered these reports, he was a scientist. He had to look seriously at it. His initial thoughts were it was swamp gas, which made a lot of people laugh at the time, you know. And then, thankfully, J. Allen Hynek saw quite easily that these reports, once he seriously looked at these reports, he saw, wait a minute, there is something going on here. There truly is something going on here.
But slowly but surely Hynek came around and said, you know, this is not right. Some of these things I can't explain.
He became disillusioned because the military were keeping the real cases for themselves and giving him a load of the rubbish cases and telling him to say this and to say that. So he then created his own department of investigations after that.
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say to that, Colonel Patrick?
Well, these charges are absolutely untrue. Actually, the United States Air Force releases statistics on the UFO phenomena through the Department of Defense press desk periodically. And we've always honored accredited media when they want to investigate a given specific sighting.
There's nothing to hide?
There's nothing to hide at all.
Is there anything in the files, either classified or unclassified, that would indicate that there may be extraterrestrial visitors over here?
First of all, the project is completely unclassified. And there's nothing in the records which would indicate that we have been visited by any advanced civilization.
You know, they've had involvement for decades. That's official involvement. But what about unofficial? There was an incident in the early 1960s at Socorro, New Mexico. involved police officer, Lonnie Zamora. And he was chasing a speeding car. And he noticed down in the canyon there was something else, so he let the speeding car go. There was this white object down in the canyon. So he took off where he could get a better view of it. And it was like an ovalish, roundish object on legs with a strange red insignia on the front. And lo and behold, there's two creatures, two men, standing next to it, with some kind of white suit on. He got out of the police car, went to approach it, and all of a sudden there's this noise. This thing takes off with flames shooting out from underneath it. He literally jumped down behind his car for protection and watched it disappear into the distance. He got on the radio for assistance. When his colleague got there, the bushes where this thing had been were still smouldering, and it left 3 depressions in the ground and, in inverted commas, footprints. So the FBI were brought in, Hynek, as part of Project Blue Book, was brought in. All this was filmed and photographed, all the ground markings and so on. Lonnie Zamora was a long-standing member of the local police force. There was a couple of other witnesses who saw this thing, flying over, and that kind of changed Hynek's stance.
What are we dealing with here? Is this reality? Is it non-reality? And the conclusion of that particular investigation was, again, nothing was warranted. No further investigation demands to look at this enigma.
How does the Air Force look upon people who make reports of UFO? Do they look on them as qualified observers?
Yes, they do look on them as qualified observers. Actually, most people who report a UFO sighting are patriotic citizens who have been mystified by something that they've seen, and through a patriotic sense, report it to the local law enforcement officials or to the United States Air Force base near them.
Well, how about the tracking and detection facilities that the Air Force itself has? How does this fit the program?
Well, actually, to begin with, the United States Air Force is charged by an act of Congress with the air defense of the United States. And the North American Air Defense Command and the Air Defense Command have space tracking facilities which are constantly on the alert 24 hours a day. We're interested in anything that flies in our atmosphere.
Well, how about UFO reports in other countries? How are they handled?
Well, UFOs actually occur worldwide. However, the United States is the only country in the world that places as much emphasis on the phenomenon. Other countries place a burden of proof on the observer and not on their Air Force.
That would make your job a lot easier if they did that here.
Yes, it would.
Project Blue Book was a front. It was more of a public relations exercise rather than an official UFO study. It's always claimed that some of the other interesting sightings went elsewhere, and Hynek never saw them, and he never found out about them. But he found out enough that it changed his mind, let's put it that way. I think they've learned from things like Project Blue Book, where if you have a free-for-all, you basically have too much data, and they don't have the people to go out and investigate it. Whereas if it's from a military source, it can pretty much be investigated at source at the time. And it can be recorded on multiple formats, as well as the various cameras that they have, the various types of radar and what else, whereas civilians can't do that. It should also mean that there's no hoaxes. Because if you're in the military and you submit a hoax, I think that, you're going to spend a long time in whatever the American equivalent is to Siberia.
What we have to bear in mind is that many of these naval personnel, military personnel, Air Force personnel have signed the Official Secrets Act. And back in 2001 at the American Press Club, all these generals are lined up medals, braids, and all the rest of it. And I went, here we go, at last. But these are not men in the street. These are military men who's had their own UFO sightings. Sightings of strange craft above silos, switching off the silos, etc., missiles, the Minuteman missile. A lot of these guys are there to tell the media and the press, and they told their stories of what they saw. Eventually it was through Senator Harry Reid. He was made aware of these videos coming from the Navy, the United States Navy.
Someone in the military is sick and tired of the lies and the disinformation that they keep bringing forward and, you know, fobbing off to the general public. Someone wanted this out. And I'm glad that they did, because they were the only ones that could do this. If it was like the likes of me or, you know, someone else coming forward with, oh, look at this film footage of this UFO, they wouldn't buy it, they wouldn't have it. It had to come from an official source.
Some of these videos were leaked to him, and he became aware of, we need to know what's going on here, because it could have been a national threat, a threat to the defence of the United States. So he pushed for that to go through the Senate, and he asked questions in the Senate that we need answers to this, and we want to speak to the pilots who left the USS Nimitz and the USS Theodore Roosevelt, which was two of the main aircraft carriers that dispatched those aircraft to go towards these unidentified flying objects.
They had what was called, in the last months of Trump's presidency, the COVID relief bill. You think, well, what do UFOs have to do with COVID? Nothing. But it was the kind of bill you could add things on. And the UAP study was one of those things that was added to it. It was going to go through Congress anyway, and hey presto, out came the preliminary report. And all of the cases come from military sources. So there's no reports from members of the public.
We're really getting into the nitty-gritty now. They're talking about high-standing academic people. With the ordinary man in the street who's also seen these things, let us not forget, then we're dealing with true stories as well. Just because it's Air Force pilots and we're Joe Blogs in the street, it's still the same phenomena. Irrespective of it's a pilot or Mrs. Smith, they're seeing the same exact objects.
We found out that there had been a secret study called AATIP, AATIP, Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, that as part of its work looked into UFOs. Nobody knew that that existed up until 2017 when it was released in the New York Times. The UAP task force looked at 144 cases going back to 2004. One of the reasons going back to 2004 is that, and it was said by one of the pilots, they had actually upgraded the radar facilities that they had. And it was since then that they've now been able to track these things. So maybe we just didn't have the technology. If they'd used data prior to 2004, it might have opened another can of worms for them. One that perhaps they didn't have control over. The reason for 2004 is because of the Nimitz sightings and the films that were taken.
Fleet of them, look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. The whole thing, dude.
We know that the 3 videos that came to light that were connected with the Navy are original. Maybe someone within the high establishments wanted this to get out.
Whether it was leaked and then they had to disclose because it was leaked is a bit of a grey area. The only thing about the footage, it's not very good quality. I do know that the quality could be better, and they probably got better. So the question does arise, why did they release such a grainy, awful image?
Another one called the FLIR, forward-looking infrared. That was seen at very low altitude to begin with, over the water.
It's like a small Tic Tac, but obviously larger in dimensions when it was pursued by the military jets.
It was said to be travelling at 46,000 miles an hour, which is about 10 times the speed of sound.
Now, the G-force on that was such that if that was a normal aircraft with a normal pilot, he would be dead.
But it was flying erratically. There was no visual exhaust plumes. There was no visual wings or aerofoils, you know, that you would expect to see on an aircraft.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Project.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger. There's troubleshooting.
Are you box moving target?
No, I took an auto track.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Wow.
We had the pilots as well communicating with each other and saying, geez, look at that thing. There's a whole fleet of them.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
My gosh.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
There we go. We've been saying that for years and years.
That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not.
That is an LNS, dude.
Well, if there's like another thing, it's rotating.
You've finally captured something on videotape that people have been seeing for hundreds of years. We know that from the 1940s, many aircraft, the American Air Force was followed by what's known as the Foo Fighters, as were the Germans, the German Air Force. And each country thought it was a secret device of the other. And it wasn't until after the war, when records were displayed, that nobody knew what these Foo Fighters were. And it was just a ball of fire appearing on the wingtips.
Since the close of the war, hundreds of reports of strange objects in the sky have been filed with the Air Force. And most of them have been easily explained. Experimental jet aircraft, weather balloons, reflected ground lights, unusual cloud formations, and so on. But here is a picture that was released just today by the United States Coast Guard. It shows 4 luminous objects in formation in the sky over Salem, Massachusetts. And this picture was taken at 9:35 a.m. on July 16th by a Coast Guard photographer.
There's no definitive conclusion. They've said that some of them could be like misidentifications, things that we all know about. One is balloons, atmospherics, a whole host of things that, we are seen in the sky. And then they've got the last one is other. We have a category in that report called other, and that can be anything. But what you will not find anywhere mentioned in the report is the word aliens or extraterrestrial. Those words are not in it anywhere. But you could say that they're in the other category.
And it was more geared in line with how we can safeguard our pilots and the crew of, in being in danger in these situations. They kept using the weather balloon hypothesis. We've still not got away from that since the inception of Roswell.
The way they came to that conclusion is because the Americans believe that they have the most advanced military technology. And this was beyond them, beyond their capabilities, and I think it frightened the living daylights out of them.
If it's their own technology, then why are they keeping it so secret? Surely they want to showcase it to Korea, Chinese and the Russians. Hey, look what we've got. Look what we've got. Have they devised some fantastic craft that can exceed, the capabilities of modern aircraft? And if so, we have to be very concerned with that. So obviously we have to look over the fence to the possibilities that it's another country. That said, I still believe we're dealing with something extraterrestrial or interdimensional.
There's the sand dunes, that's the north. There's the sound, of course. Walk along here towards the west. But I'd, oh, goodness gracious. Over those dunes right there. Over the dunes. Oh my God. There she is. There she is, right there. Oh my God.
Well, everybody would like UFOs to be beings from another world. I mean, it's the most romantic theory, but let's just stay there and say, we have to remember it is a theory or a hypothesis. It's called the ETH, extraterrestrial hypotheses. And there are many, you know, theories of what UFOs may or may not be.
Like here in the United Kingdom, this is a phenomena that's touched every continent in this planet.
Are we dealing with phenomena, plural, rather than phenomenon, singular? Could it be multiple things rather than any one thing? Me personally, I wouldn't rule any of them out, you know, and that includes extraterrestrial. If you had a top 10 list of theories, you'd have to put it in there somewhere.
As ufologists, we were waiting for this long-awaited report coming from the Pentagon, which is allegedly going to blow the lid on the UFO phenomena and give us more answers to what we've been looking at. So I was really surprised when it came out. It was only about 9 pages or so when it officially came out.
What's interesting is the onslaught of this release of a document with regards to the UAPs. How many pages was it? 9 pages? And did the world react to it? No. It's alarming.
It should have been a real in-depth report, with it being such an important subject.
This is the thing about this subject. Trust is broken, and it's so hard to come by good trust in it. It has been given knock after knock after knock. So all respect, all reputation has been destroyed. And they have the gall now to release this paper to express mild interest when they knew all along they were real. They've lied and helped to create the propaganda in announcing that they are bogus, that they are not real. The trust, this has wiped away trust and integrity with the powers that be, so no wonder we can't trust them. And it's interesting, isn't it, how they've changed the acronym from UFO, unidentified flying object, to unidentified aerial phenomena. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so it feels like they've upgraded from the typical 1950s flying saucer, woo-woo-woo-woo type thing coming from another planet, to aerial phenomena, which to me that's kind of spooky because it's almost an admission as though we're going into dimensions, or the theory of interdimensional reality.
Within the field of ufology, UAP is a much more accurate term, but I can tell you now, if you went to your local shopping mall, your local shopping centre, and stopped the first 100 people that went past you and said, "What's a UFO?" and 99 out of 100 will say, "An unidentified flying object, a spacecraft," or words to that effect. If you said, "What's a UAP?"
there's a classified version of this. We were speaking with some of my colleagues the other day about that. I think it's about 96, 97 pages long. It really goes into the nitty-gritty of what they truly believe is behind these wonderful footage. I would like to think that that report will also come out, but if it does, will it be doctored? Will it be heavily censored? I mean, the American government have now agreed and lifted the secrecy on the Tic Tac UFOs, and so therefore I would like to think that maybe this ongoing report will come out and show us more, a lot more. Clearly, within the lines of that report, they were saying that there were objects that defied explanation. That's a good side, but the bad side is just niggling away at the back of me is the wonderment is, could it be our own technology? And they're happy. The American military machine are happy for it to be masquerading as a fanciful UFO because it takes the weight what it truly is.
They've said, well, it could be the Russians or China. We don't think it is, but it might be. So is that, you know, sort of backdoor way of saying we need more money for the defence budget, just in case these things are, you know, our foreign adversaries? When you look at what they spent at the Department of Defence, I think it was 22 million, compared to the overall defence budget, which goes into the trillions. It's a trifle. You know, might sound a lot of money to us, but it is nothing.
Now we're on a roll, so to speak, that maybe the powers that be will say, OK, we need to find out a wee bit more about this. Here's the money. Because when you look at the money that goes into the black budget programme of American military machine, millions of dollars go into the funding of these new aircraft and stuff like that. Let's have a wee chunk of that and look properly at the UFO enigma, because it's now crying out for this demand for answers.
Looking for life out there is brilliant, but then will the establishments tell us the truth? No. And we're finding that over and over again. So no matter what is found, what is discovered, what is brought to the table, if it's a threat to, you know, society, or, you know, it's something the military establishments, most notably the military establishments, want to keep secret, you can bet your bottom dollar they'll bury it. They'll patent it and push it away.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve.
Major Keyhole, what is your opinion of these new sightings of unidentified objects?
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin. During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
Our basic difficulty in dealing with these is that there is no measurement of them that makes it possible for us to put them in any pattern that would be profitable for a deliberate, custom sort of analysis to take the next step. we have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
The government is multifaceted. There are times when one department doesn't know what the other department's doing. It's on a need-to-know basis. You don't need to know that the elephant's got ears. You're working on the trunk, you know? It's as simple as that. And that could be another reason why they've tailored the UAP task force. Now, you don't need to know. It comes through us, and you lot out there, you don't need to. We need to know, you don't.
If they did come forward and say, yes, it's real, because of all the people who have come forward to state they've had these experiences and were laughed at by the media cartel, you know, how is that all going to fare? It's going to go tops up, everything's going to tip up, you know, and the way I see it is that damn them for what they've done, because it's the truth that we know is the truth. They're telling you that it doesn't exist, and they are above you, technology that we don't have here.
One thing that I noticed in the Pentagon's report, there was one chapter which was also in a different colour, and it was trying to do away with the stigma that's attached to the subject and encourage the various military people to come forward.
Now, ridicule has been a very unfortunate factor in this thing. I know, but what it boils down to, that anybody reports one now, they'll say, you're crazy, look what the Condon report said. Now, if we let the Condon report go unchallenged, we would be guilty of letting these people be victimized. And there are many people who have been badly hurt by official ridicule after sighting. The airline pilots today, most of them will not report a sighting publicly. Many pilots have told me that I wouldn't report one to the Air Force if the thing flew right in the cockpit. Because they cite the case of Captain Killian, who was very badly ridiculed and finally silenced by his airline. According to his wife, said he was pressured. They were pressured into it by the Air Force. Now that's hearsay, but the fact is the man since that time has never answered any questions. He will not go on TV, radio, and talk to reporters at all.
In the old days, if they had reported something or tracked it on radar while in flight, they were ordered not to speak about it. They were told that they had to sign a form to say that that is top secret, then otherwise they'd lose their jobs. I think now that this admittance by the Navy has certainly, you know, brought a lot of people out, and it's given us hope in the fact that if these guys are saying they're real, then obviously we're dealing with something that is an unusual phenomenon.
There's enough evidence to suggest that we really, truly should be looking at these sightings in the sky. And again, getting back to this Pentagon report, what a wonderful disclosure that was, to really put their hands up and say, we don't know what this is. Massive difference from the 1940s when they just wanted to put it away in the shadows.
You may have noticed a lady pilot called Alex Dietrich. She was one of those involved in the Tic Tac sighting. She was a Top Gun fighter pilot. She has no interest in the subject, but she came out of the woodwork and on the record simply to show, look, if you report these sightings, forget the conspiracy theories. You're not going to lose your pension. You're not going to get fired, you know. And she was openly encouraging others to do exactly the same as she had. So I think that's a very positive move, I really do. Since the Department of Defense UFO study was revealed in the New York Times in December 2017, there's been a complete shift. Ufology was looked upon as a silly season subject.
just reinforce the fact to the people watching that UFOs are real, no matter what they may be. They clearly are real. It's a substantial enigma. It's been with us through countless millennia. God bless all those people who's come forward and told their stories.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. The whole thing, dude.
What the report and the attendant press coverage has already done, and I've said it on a few interviews, I told you so.
I just hope that they tell us, you know, yes, they are real, and they bring us that hard evidence to prove that we are not going mad. You know, that we have seen UFOs, that we have seen them at close range. They are real, but what they are, we don't know. Trust me when I tell you that when you're in their presence, that changes everything. People will tell you what they think you saw. They didn't see what you saw. So for those establishments of power who continually deny the reality, then I'm afraid, you know, they need to be open about this, because we want to know the truth.